Here's the story of 2020, a year for us to finally live in sync. So many things that need our understanding. It's time for us to think. It's the story of fellow humans who were busy with lives of their own, but they thought of bringing us together, and we can watch from home. We can all make this world much better. It's about what we're willing to confront. So sit back and enjoy the conversation of these rainbow warriors called the Queer Bunch. The Queer Bunch. The Queer Bunch. It's a great day to watch the Queer Bunch.
Hello, Queer Bunch. I am your host, Kero Saleib, and today we are going to talk about a very amazing conversation that's very dear to my heart. An episode that will enlighten you and bring you understanding on the history of Turtle Islands and its indigenous people. But first, before we do that, let's check in with my co-host, whom I only get to see once a month at this point when we record our episodes. Guys, how are you doing? I miss you.
Hey.
Hey, hi. Great.
You guys are doing well and everything has been good since our last episode. Have you guys, based on the last episode of our conversation, has that helped you in some way talk about the new normal and its challenges? Has this been helpful to you guys in your daily lives?
Well, I'm going to speak to that a little bit. So I had my scooter stolen from my property a little over a week ago.
Oh, cool.
And I think not just what the conversation, but everything that's been going on, I was surprisingly uninterested in, like, I didn't get that affected by it. I didn't get upset. I didn't really, to me, it was just a thing that got lost with all the stuff and all the conversations we're having and hearing about people's struggles. And got friends who are losing family members. My brother-in-law just lost somebody to cancer last night.
Sorry.
So thank you. It really is, they're just things, right? So first world problems, I kind of think of it as, so it was easy to just kind of like, okay, it's gone now. So what? If it comes back, it comes back. If it doesn't. And there is a lot more people in need out there. And I think there's a lot more of that going on. So that's what happened. And I'm starting to teach as well on online. I'm teaching people who got laid off workers from GM and safety courses and stuff. So that's going really well too. So I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, Ticha. Any co-hosts, anything you guys want to add?
Let's see. It's to me, it's September. And I'm actually, if you can see, I'm wearing this clothes today, which is come from where I am from. I'm a Latina, I'm Mexicana, and this month we're actually celebrating the independence of Mexico and and a lot of the countries in Central America. So
Wow.
it feels good to say that we are independent, even though our government are not working the way they're supposed to, but at least we are not dealing with the colonization that brings so much damage to a lot of cultures. Yeah. And that's something I guess we're going to be talking about today. So I feel very proud being a Latina. I feel very proud to be able to be here sitting with this great diversity and be able to, for my culture to have a representation somewhere, so it feels really good. Everything else has been working out well.
And you're looking fabulous.
Yes.
Thank you.
She always does, though. She always does. Well, as
We haven't heard from Alphonso.
Let's see. A couple of things. Since we have Native people on today, I am proud to announce that this year's recipient and beneficiary of the PinkPlayMags Awards, which is coming up on World AIDS Day, is the Two-Spirit people of First Nations, that group. And the other thing is, I just filmed my first commercial. I have an agent now.
That's right.
I'm doing auditions.
She fancy her.
And it was an amazing experience. Speaking of new normal, like the limitations of how many people could be on set, having to take a COVID test every single time you went on set, it was,
Oh, wow.
but I did it. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to share.
Thanks for that, Alfonso. How about you, Antoine?
You know what? That last episode was pretty heavy. I found it a very, very episode to digest. But thank you everyone for watching it. The show is really gaining a lot of momentum, and we're getting a lot of support and a lot of great feedback. So thank you for watching. We're doing we had great viewership. Other than that, I've been working on The Couch, my other show, doing a lot more interviews. We just launched a new division at our media to help LGBTQ2S plus authors to get their stories and work out there into the publishing world. So it's been nonstop. And then I have this that you got me all sucked into this, doing this show. I love you. So yeah, that's me.
Well, that's great. And you know, it's all wonderful to hear from you, but enough about us. Let's get the show rolling, because we want to hear from our amazing guest speakers today. And as I mentioned earlier, today's episode is extremely near and dear to my heart. The reason being, as an Egyptian growing up in white-dominated cities like Montreal and Toronto, I started internalizing racism towards myself. I was internalizing it to the point that I did not even want to be recognized as an Egyptian. I used to wear colored contacts. I'd go like fake skin tanning to tell people, no, I'm olive skin, so I could tell people I'm either Italian, Portuguese, or Greek, everything but Egyptian. It was not until 6 years ago, just 6 years ago, that I finally started loving myself. And the reason being, I was at a club and there was this lovely young lady. She started talking to me and she's like, you're Egyptian. I'm like, how the heck did you know that? She's like, you just have those Egyptian features. I could feel it in your energy. And then I asked her what she is, and she said, I'm indigenous. And she said, you know, you and me are not that much different. I was like, how is that so? And she explained to me that I'm indigenous to my home country as an Egyptian. We as Egyptians don't identify as Arab. We only identify as Arab because, you know, there's been a lot of genocide of Egyptian people that we were forced to speak the Arab language. But we are also indigenous, and if it was not for this individual, I would not be a proud Egyptian today. And it's that connection with indigenous culture, indigenous people, that made me study my own history of my own civilization, my own culture, and realize that a lot of ancient civilization were very much in the same boat. There's been a lot of genocide of indigenous people across the world, but that also made me realize we need to start doing the work here in our own home, in our own backyard, where a place that we call Canada, the land of free and proud and happy and so on. But there's so much that is not talked about. And one of the things is decolonization and reconciliation of indigenous people. And that's why today we have two incredible guest speakers on our show. Both of them identify as two-spirited, and I am so happy to be introducing them. Our first guest that I'm going to introduce is Keitha Keeshig-Tobias. They are from Keitha. I'm so sorry if I screw this up again, but I'm really gonna try. Nian Shinig Ming, Chippewas of Newash Unceded First Nations and the Delaware Nation of Moravian Town, and grew up in Toronto. Keitha is inspired by pen and ink fairy tale illustrations, the female form and nature motives found in Art Nouveau and Art Deco, and the connection of spirit between us and nature shown in indigenous arts and culture. Her favorite medium is dip pen and ink, especially blue ink, blue like at a twilight, a time of transition, blue like the water, which is women's privilege to cherish and protect. Keitha has taken on the duty of representing indigenous cultures in contemporary context and specializes in bringing forth complex issues like science, history, current affairs, empathy, and gracefulness within her unique N8V Nouveau Style. Keitha, we are super happy to have you on the show today, and it's such an honor for us. I have been following you on Instagram. You've been busy with giant murals, including one that you were showing us to earlier. How are you doing? How are you holding up with being this busy?
Hi. Well, yeah, it's kind of tough. Like some days I just go home and I pass out, and then I wake up and back at work again. And then I look at the clock and, oh my God, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I better get some sleep. And then again, I'll give you a look at what I've been doing.
Yeah, show
And
us.
I just finished this off, finished working my day here. So over here we have, that one is sema, or tobacco. Then we have sweetgrass, sage, and then in the corner over here is a cedar tree.
Wow.
So this right now is a collaboration with 3 other artists and some helpers who are all part of the run. So that's a Red Urban Nation Collective, and we've been doing murals here at the Bickford Center, which is at 777 Bloor Street West.
Okay.
So that's just across the street from Christie Pitts. And we've covered this whole building in indigenous murals all over the place. Yeah, just bringing our perspective and everything like that to this area and changing the energy.
And it looks amazing, Keitha. This is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's such a privilege for us to experience that live where you are right now. So thank you for that. And if you guys want, if you follow Keitha's Instagram, which we'll put in the description of the episode later, this is one of like thousands of projects that Keitha has been working on.
I've had for the past 2 weeks, every day is like a new project. So I've finished like 10 of them already in the past 2 weeks.
No.
It's crazy. I've been doing concrete blocks. I've been doing murals in Mississauga, murals in East York, this one here. Been talking with the University of South Dakota, and I did TIFF, and it's just incredible the amount of stuff. Like everybody's trying to get all their art in right now before we may have to go into a second quarantine. So everybody's just trying to pump it out and give some artists jobs.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that, Keitha. Our second guest is Patrick Hunter. Patrick Hunter is a Two-Spirit Ojibwe artist, graphic designer, and entrepreneur from Red Lake, Ontario. In 2011, he made the move to Toronto, and in 2014, launched Patrick Hunter Art and Design, specializing in fine and digital artwork and designs from his Ojibwe roots, with the intent to create a broader awareness of Indigenous culture and iconography. He is best known for his paintings in the woodland art style, in the corporate world through artistic and graphic collaborations with RBC and BMO Banks, Ernst & Young, West Elm, Staples, Promotional Products, eBay Canada, CTV, Global Affairs Canada, and that just to name a few. He's busy. Patrick is the first artist in residence for the Prince's Trust Canada, a royal charity in which aids in the reclamation of Indigenous languages in Canada. Patrick, I love your work, you know that. As a matter of fact, I have here one of his mugs. I love, yes, I cherish that mug that I got. You know, what you do is always very, it's very beautiful, and I've been following your work on Instagram as well, and you've also been very busy. How are you keeping up with all this?
Pretty well. I'm pretty lucky in that I take some time off from, you know, being very creative all the time. I'm sure Keitha does this too, where she just takes, sometimes you just need a big break and go back to, you know, where you come from and recharge a little bit. So I actually just got back to the city from Sault Ste. Marie on Friday, I think it was. So I've been back about a week and ready to get back into it, get back in the ring.
Good. That's awesome. Thank you, Patrick. We're excited to have you as well on the show. And to our viewers watching today, you are about to get some serious truth and fact bombs dropped at you. Be ready, because this is a conversation that it's time that we learn something beyond just doing a land acknowledgement. And so, but before we go further into our discussions, we're going to take a short commercial break and we'll be right back.
I'm making sanitizer sensual.
I can have sex with my own husband.
What? I'm doing a nightly review for the Gardner Construction Boys.
I am flattening that curve, honey. Ugh, tighter. Oh, tighter. Ugh.
Hello?
Namaste, Raju.
Hey, yeah, just getting ready for our date.
Me too. Are you excited for tonight?
Yeah. Do you know what undetectable means?
Yeah. It means you're positive, and there's no way I can get HIV when we have sex. Times have changed, eh?
Yeah, times have changed. I'm positive and undetectable.
Thanks for letting me know.
Welcome back, folks. Keitha and Patrick, I usually ask the guests, our co-hosts, our guests, if you guys are ready for our questions, but I feel that this time I need to ask our host, are you ready for some serious, thought-provoking real talk?
Yes.
Let's get it on.
Let's get this. So let's get the ball rolling. First, we have Alphonso. Alphonso, go for it. Ask your question.
Okay, this is actually for both of you. I'd be curious to find out your opinion. I am originally from the States, and so I've been here for 10 years, but before I moved here, I had never heard of land acknowledgements at all. And my husband and I started doing events, and every now and again we get complaints from a couple of people who actually aren't indigenous at all, who tell me, oh, you should do land acknowledgements. But I sort of, in my opinion, I don't feel like, to me, it seems like it's a nice gesture, but it's not giving you back your land. It's not doing anything. So I didn't feel like it was like that important. But what are your thoughts about that? You know, because as a person of color, from one person of color to another person of color, I'm curious what you believe about the land acknowledgements.
You want to go first, Keitha?
You can go first.
I think, it depends on maybe where or who it's coming from. Like if it's a huge event with like a couple hundred people or something, I think it's important for people in the audience to hear that and, tweak their attention to something that's like, oh shit, like what, I don't know about this. Like what, it makes them want to know a little bit more. And I think it's good in that sense. Like, I think if it's coming across as disingenuous and just sort of reading from a paper, then, it gets a little tricky then. But I have to say that, like, I think I appreciate it. As you just said, it doesn't give land back to the people that lived here or anything like that. But I think it's a courtesy thing, and I would be for it. Mostly, I'd be more for it than against it, as a courtesy.
Keitha.
Okay. Land acknowledgements are actually not for us. They're for the rest of Canada to acknowledge that we were here beforehand. I have done land acknowledgements in small groups and stuff like that. And when I do a land acknowledgement, I actually explain how I do them. And the way I do is more based on indigenous culture. And when indigenous people meet each other, we always, explain where we come from. We're from this reserve. This is our clan. These are our people. And that, well, for one thing, it helps us, sort out who's family and who's not, so that you're not dating cousins. But also it's tell everybody where we're coming from. What are the stories we were brought up with? What are the conditions where we live and stuff like that? And it gives you so much more idea of where we're coming from, what we're speaking to when you do a land acknowledgement like that, like talking about the land you come from and how it shapes your ideas and your thoughts. So again, it's not something, little tiny thing you read off a paper. And when they do that, it just really, there's no point in you doing it. The whole point is for us to be able to see where you're coming from and for you to see where we're coming from. So like everybody has a clear picture of each other's points of view or points of reference of what they're talking about. And that's how I do land acknowledgements.
Yeah, I really
more of like a, I'm sorry, but would you say that's, I mean, that is kind of more of a traditional way of doing it,
Mm-hmm.
in, you know, in culturally relevant to, you know, both of us. So I think there's a distinction between kind of the ways that it could be done. Yeah, I think that's important to.
I think that the reason that I chose not to, for our events, one, they're not that big. We don't, if we're lucky if we get 100 people, if that. Most of the time it's around 30 people. But the thing of it is every time I've ever seen one, I always feel like it's not genuine, that it is just them reading off something. Every now and again, there is an indigenous person who's actually doing it, but looking around at the people who are listening, it doesn't seem like it means anything. So that's the reason why I've never done it for our events.
I've done them for my Zoom calls. Like every time I start a new class, a new group, a new cohort, I actually do it for my area. And I say, you may have different land acknowledgement in your area where you live, but I like to do it because I think it brings focus to education to the people on my Zoom call.
You do it very respectfully though, Ticha. I know your feelings. So, but I understand what Alphonso is saying. I've been at events where it's just sounded like somebody just opened a paper and just recited the whole thing. It actually felt disrespectful, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it depends on how it's presented, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it does need to be personalized. And one of the things that's very interesting, Patrick and Keitha, and maybe you could fill in on this, inviting an indigenous person to do land acknowledgement. I've heard mixed things about that. Is that something that is right to do, or something that?
Okay, I like this follow.
Right, because land acknowledgement should be done by non-indigenous person, from what I understand. Or am I completely wrong about this?
I think you're on the right track in your thinking about it. I think a little bit maybe there's getting some confusion between, like, say, like an opening prayer and in the land acknowledgement. And, you know, from my point of view, I think that non-indigenous people should do a land acknowledgement in some capacity. And like you said as well, Kero, is to personalize that to your experience. And I think that kind of leads back to a little bit of what Keitha was saying too, about how, you know, the way that would be done before was more of like this is my background, this is what I'm coming to share with you guys, as opposed to, as we just kind of hopefully put to bed, that it shouldn't just be like a statement, you know, that copied and pasted from some other event that you've been to.
Yeah.
Yeah, just personalize it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice, and thank you for answering that. Now, I did see on Instagram signs that were posted across the city, and one of them said, I lost my land and all I got was this lousy land acknowledgements. And Keitha, I believe that's your work, correct?
Actually, I stole that off of a meme king. He's no longer on Instagram or anything like that. And then the sad thing is, he made amazing memes that made you really think about things that are going on, but he got so much hate mail, so many credible death threats that he had to actually get off all social media. It's really sad. And I did ask him if I could use his little meme. I was thinking of making t-shirts and stuff like that, but yeah, so like I did.
I'm sorry, I think it's brilliant, actually. So
Arnell Tailfeather was his name, but like he was told by the police in Alberta that there are 25 credible death threats against him that he needs to take it seriously and get offline.
That is
Wow.
awful. That is so awful and
Yeah, no,
heartbreaking.
no, this is not right.
Yeah, but that's why we're having this conversation today.
Yeah, and the sad thing is that's not the only time. That's why comments are taken off of indigenous issues, like in newspapers, online, news media, stuff like that. They have to close off the comments because the amount of hatred that comes through is disgusting. Like a woman lost her baby, and you have people saying, "Oh yeah, you should throw yourself off the bus too," or like, "Oh, one less Indian for us to worry about." So it's really sad that those kinds of things happen. So even I don't know.
Yeah, no, but Keitha, thank you for those reality checks. That's so important that you vocalize that, because that's a truth. I mean, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing with to Indigenous folks across Canada. That we're welcoming, loving country, but it's such a illusion of that, and it's so heartbreaking. Yeah, so let's continue. Thank you both for answering that question. Viviana, you're up next with your question. Go for it.
Wow, when I always came to my question, I'm always kind of speechless because everything I heard. And my question is actually to talk about a different group that we all supposed to be a community. But I want, a point of view from you folks. When we talk about the LGBTQI2+ community, it happens that a lot of members from this community doesn't even know what the 2 stands for. Right. And when you try to explain them, a lot of them, they don't want to recognize, they don't want to acknowledge this. And this happened here in Canada. And we're talking about with a community who has been marginalized, but at the same time, this community tried to marginalize these people who already have been marginalized before. So what is your your comment about we as immigrants that we're using your land, your territory, and being a marginalized community, and we still don't want to recognize you as a group? Because from what I know from the history, Two Spirits used to mean so much for your culture. It was like a bless to the land, to the families, have a Two Spirit people living and being raised in these groups of community. And now we don't see that. We don't want to talk about, and I have to include myself because sometimes I forgot to mention the 2+, or just the 2. And so I want to hear a little bit of you about this topic, and for us as an LGBTQ community, understand this.
I went first.
Take it away.
Oh, is it my turn? Okay, I'll go first this time. Yeah. I guess it's kind of difficult. And yeah, I've had friends who say they have a hard time actually going down into the village here in Toronto. They feel that when they go into the gay bars, they're disrespected because they're very obviously Indigenous, and a lot of them don't feel like going to the bars, just because they don't feel safe being gay and being Indigenous in some of the bars. But it seems like it's through everything. I know just being, it's just something you always have to put up with, or get ready to defend yourself. And yeah, and I've seen a lot of, it's not just some people don't want to hear about what Two Spirit is. There's a lot of people who are taking it on as being part of their culture, and that bothers me too, because there's very specific long-standing historical reasons for the 2S. But it's all been very muddled too. With residential school, there are quite a lot of elders who know a lot about our religion and our culture, but they've gone to residential school, and just the Catholic belief system has been pounded into them so hard that they also themselves cannot accept two-spirit people or two-spirit teachings because of that. Even though historically we have always had more than two genders. There are like movies, stories, things. You can see that these things have been in throughout all of our cultures in North America. I think maybe down into South America. I'm not too informed on cultures south of the United States, but I do know there was some places that have like 6 different genders. I know in my family it's never been something we would talk about or even discuss. We just accept everybody for who they are, and when our nieces and nephews show us how they want to be, then we just accept it. Wow. And do it that way. Like, I'm not too big into labels. I don't like don't like labels. I just like to be me and be allowed to be who I want to be. My children seem to like labels a little bit more, so I'm having to learn to remember pronouns and remember how they wish to be identified as. But yeah, generally in our family, it's just who you want to be is who you are, and you know, we're there to fight and protect and take care of you. So I don't know if that answers your question. Or if I've gotten off a topic here or something.
No. That's okay, Keitha. Patrick, go ahead.
I think from my perspective, like I grew up, I mean, I think a lot of gay people have, or, you know, two-spirit people on the LGBTQ2S spectrum have a similar story in that, you know, you kind of had to hide who you were growing up. And, you know, in finding out or coming out, I think it's pretty individualistic to want to identify as, you know, whichever those genders are. From my perspective, like, I kind of interchange between being gay, or, well, being labeled as gay, and then also accepting the label of two-spirit as well. I think from my perspective, it's like learning about two-spiritedness. Like, I didn't learn that from my parents. Like, they didn't know anything about that. But, you know, just from like community members and stuff like that, I think, you know, I've learned it from them. But I think what I'm trying to say is just that with the whole spectrum of LGBTQ2S, like, I think sometimes maybe it's just too long and people are like, oh, there's a 2S now, but it kind of also, you know, correlates to this fact that Indigenous people are generally an afterthought when it comes to so, like, the culture, the broader Canadian culture. It's like, oh yeah, there's these people over here too. So I mean, I'm not shocked that sometimes people don't include it in that, you know, the letter spectrum of LGBTQ2S. And in, you know, quite honestly, why I kind of identify as two-spirit is, you know, it's because it's true. Like, I do feel like I have two spirits in me, and some of them, and sometimes identify with one more than the other. But at the same time, what I started to realize in working with corporate Canada, and then also just in the communities that I have the privilege of traveling to throughout the country, is that there's not a lot of indigeneity out there that's like visible. So in saying that I'm two-spirit, it kind of like, I get asked the question, and then I'm able to tell people that, you know, there's not a lot of indigeneity, you know, in architecture, for instance. So if I can just put it in language for people to understand, like, that's why I try to advocate for that. There just needs to be a lot more of it, and obviously we got to see it tonight with Keitha's huge, beautiful murals. She has a couple of them on that building. And, you know, if you do like a little walking tour around the city, you can see a couple of, you know, murals and stuff like that. But it'd be awesome just to see, you know, road signs changed, or, you know, just some more iconography to bring it back to people's the forefront of their mind that we actually were here first, and we do deserve to be not an afterthought.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually a good point. I mean, people will travel the world to go to Egypt to see hieroglyphs, but here, indigenous people still exist with the iconography, the language, and so on, and that nobody travels across the world to come and see that. And I think that's what we just said.
Actually, they do, and I've had to remove a lot of them off of my Instagram because they come in and they see our artwork, and they make it for, you know, the bargain basement. They rip it off and they sell it cheaply.
Wow. Wow.
And I've seen a lot of them, especially T-shirts. I've seen a lot of them start following me, and then like right away I block them when I go and check. And you can see when you look through their Instagram feeds, they got a bunch of blonde ladies with those chicken feather headdresses and all that stuff. And then, you know, okay, that's not indigenous, you know.
Yeah.
And then I block and have them removed.
Yeah. Thank you again, both of you, for your answers. This ties in very nicely with Ticha's question. Ticha, go for it.
Yeah, I also want to make a comment that I've been a union activist for many years, and now the Ontario Federation of Labour and a lot of the unions are actually going to SLGBTQ. They're putting the 2S in front
first, and that's how it should be, I believe.
Yeah. So, and we can do that as well, and I've been trying to use that as well. So it brings it a little bit to the forefront and not as an afterthought, I believe. And it's a bit of a move, you know, but, you know, how do we act upon that? And also a comment about what Keitha said about the, you know, you alluded to the education. So we are, you know, we don't have enough education in our schools about First Nations and Two-Spirit people. And the history is very long and very old of the Two-Spirit peoples. And so I just wanted to ask, how does our understanding of Two-Spirit inform the possibility of our political activism?
A
short question, but a deep one.
Can you phrase that a different way?
Well, what's the possibility of political activism that's brought about by all the, there is already a lot of protests and activism going on. We have Black Lives Matter, and we have First Nations people who are targeted by the police and things like that, and Two-Spirit people targeted by police, trans, etc. So how does it inform the possibility of more political activism? How can we keep this momentum going?
Well, one thing I think we should do is Indigenous activism has been around for a long time, and we've got everything already planned out. We know we have bills that need to be passed. People just need to get behind us. And, you know, it's like an Indigenous MP who's put together bills, and people need to get behind and, you know, just follow what they're doing. There are lots of Indigenous events for Two-Spirit, for social injustices, you know, defund the police, cleaning up the water, the air, you know, oil spills, resources. There are just so many. And the only thing we actually need is people to show up to our events and actually participate and not come and take over. That's one thing we have a lot of problems with, is there are a lot of other groups that want to come and help us, but they want to be the leaders. They want to start their own things, start their own campaign, have their own projects, and be in charge of all of that. And it's like, don't waste your time. We already have everything right here. Just follow us and let us lead.
Yeah.
And don't make us stand there and waste all our time trying to teach you how to do all this stuff when we've already got it here and it's all ready, and all you have to do is say, yes, show me what to do, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. How about you? What do you think, Patrick?
I think she said that's probably what I would want to say too, is just the fact that like there are groups that come in that try to take over, and it's if you just take the time to listen, and I think this kind of goes for any non-person of color watching this podcast or Zoom call, is just to kind of take a seat and just listen to the people of color leading the charge, because they're the ones that have kind of endured the longest. Like, it's not new to us, it's just new to, you know, white people pretty much. And, you know, having said that, I saw it like this kind of, you know, thought-provoking, maybe funny meme that was like, oh, how'd it go? Like, of course we're not going to trust, you know, the people that have lived here for thousands and thousands of years. Things have been great the last, you know, say 500, and then it listed off everything that's kind of going wrong with, like, you know, climate change. There's huge fires everywhere. Just the whole planet is in crisis, and it's kind of funny that, you know, indigenous knowledge is not the first place that they go to. They like try to come up with these new crazy solutions that don't fucking work.
Yeah.
Well,
Straight up.
I'm just saying, give you space, give you your space that you're trying to, for the political activism. Don't try to take over. And there's this, I think there's also this, there's a space for doing coalition building, so we can work together on stuff, but you also have to give space for individual issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's, I'm glad you're informing your audience of.
Yeah, thank you. And that again goes very well with where we're going out with this conversation, because it sounds from what Keitha and you, Patrick, what you're saying is when people try to come in and take over, it's not that much different from colonization. It's colonization of activism groups that exist. Like, it's like, why is it that you?
I wonder if that's like a it's such a learned behavior, or something that they've just kind of constantly.
Oh, it's very learned and very purposeful.
Yeah. I think it can be
the work I do with my artwork and the science and stuff. So many things that we use every day are not thought of as ours. Like, our children are taught in schools that indigenous people are not good at math. We've got no science, and we're just a bunch of dummies who don't know how to follow rules and stuff like that, or be intelligent. But the thing is, like, there's so many things in this world that we have brought here because of our science, because of our knowledge on nutrition, on plants, on things going on in the human body, the structures and stuff like that. Like aspirin is an indigenous discovery. 70% of the world's food is indigenous discoveries. Like, even curry from India would not be the same thing, because chili peppers come from the Americas. They were found nowhere else. And I know there'll be some people coming on saying, yeah, but, you know, like, we created our own chilies. And I was like, yeah, you interbreeded our chilies to get the chilies that you're using now, but it's still ours. Vulcanized rubber, brain boots, umbrellas.
Wow.
I can just go on and on. Like cocaine is actually very good for surgeries, and you just actually take the powder and you sprinkle it in the wound, and the pain is gone, and you can continue surgeries. We were doing brain surgeries before contact. We knew how to, what is it called, metallurgy. We knew how to get pure silver from silver ore. We knew, like, so many amazing things that we use nowadays, but it's all been, you know, like, whitewashed. And like for cocaine, for instance, we've been using that for, you know, like 10,000 years before contact, but it is still not thought of as ours. It's thought of as the, you know, the first white man who actually, you know, synthesized and purified it, and he's the one who gets the name of discovering cocaine. And it's like,
Yeah.
excuse me, they used that like 10,000 years before you came along. But all these discoveries are not considered discoveries until they have a white man's name put on the package.
Yeah.
And then it's no longer ours, and we're just a bunch of dummies,
Yeah. No,
to
and
live
then
in teepees with sticks and mud.
I mean, it's funny that you talk about teepees and mud, and I literally had someone on the street saying, talking about how they went on a camel ride in Morocco and said, you looked at me straight in the eye, dead serious, like, you know how it is, right? I'm like, excuse me? He's like, you know how it is to ride a camel? I'm like, no. My family. I'm like, no. My family left it attached to our pyramid when we immigrated. Like, is this for real? Right? It's a white person from Winnipeg on top of it all. Like, I'm just mind blown by that. But Antoine, I know you have a question as well that you want to ask in terms of.
Well, first, I'm actually still hurting from hearing Keitha talk about the indigenous community going down to the village and not feeling welcome and part of the community, because no some more. It's not a cis man world. Our community should include everybody, and that actually disturbs me and hurts me. And if there's anything my media could do to change that narrative and show the two-spirit and indigenous influence on our community, and I would be more than happy to show it. My question, as a business owner, as somebody who works with a lot of businesses, I'm involved in not-for-profit and community organizations. How the name of the episode is decolonization and reconciliation. How would we achieve that? On individual fact, like, a business owner, how do we do that in our business, or a chair of a not-for-profit organization, how do we do that?
Somebody?
Patrick?
Yeah, either.
Yeah, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
You can go.
So, I mean, it could be a number of ways too. Like, I've heard this phrasing before, like economic reconciliation is a thing that the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business puts forward, and what that kind of means is larger businesses and corporations kind of changing the structure of how they gather or aggregate work towards themselves. So changing like the request for proposal process, that always needs work when it comes to working with corporate, because they've always allowed the same time in, time out, like, businesses to get the proposal or win those contracts and stuff. So I think, honestly, from my perspective and working in those kinds of circles, like not only the CCAB, but like the Canadian Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce as well, does a great job in terms of like advocating for LGBTQ2S diversity. So, I mean, sometimes there's some hoops that you have to jump through to get to the next level, sort of thing. And when I joined the CGLCC, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, but now that I can understand what a Chamber of Commerce is and does, like, you guys are just here to advocate for me, like, when I'm not in the room. That's important. So I think hopefully in some of the work that I'm doing in terms of advocacy for small businesses, like Indigenous owned businesses, to join places like that, it's not easy, because not everyone's business is at the same level or at the same, the capacity just might not be there sometimes. But just direct ways for smaller businesses to support or take on more Indigenous clientele and stuff like that. I think honestly it helps to just have some iconography on the wall at the very least. We talked about land acknowledgements earlier, and I've definitely painted some, or my artwork's been used for some around the city with smaller businesses, and like Craig's Cookies, for instance. Like, you know, he doesn't have to do that. Like, no businesses have to. It's like they're just good people trying to put it out there that there's another community here that we sometimes forget, and that's a good way to, that's a good place to start, I think. But you know,
Keitha,
where does it end? That's up to you.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah.
Let's see. I'm trying to think here.
what would be your advice?
My advice would be, yeah, you do have to do something specific for indigenous people, and they have to, there just seems to be a lot more barriers business-wise into getting our businesses up even. Like we have, there are like so many people, like even me starting my own business, you know, like I've got 3 children to take care of, you know, I've got sisters who are, you know, like single with their children. So I spend a lot of my time and energy giving to them and helping them out. Plus I do all the social activism, plus my work, plus, you know, like any other kind of, you know, fun stuff to do. Like there is so much that I have to do all the time. Sometimes it makes it really difficult to, you know, like save up for a business loan or take the time off to go and read, I don't know, for a new grant or proposal or anything like that. I went and tried with the Ontario Arts Council to get a grant for some materials, and you know, like I spent a week writing it for $500 just to get materials. I had to explain how I'm going to use it, what are the paintings going to look like afterwards, la 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 la. I just went on and on and on, and you know, it took me a week to fill out these things for just like $500 for materials. You know, it's like,
That's ridiculous.
it's a little bit ridiculous. So I don't think I'll be doing that again. It's just,
yeah,
I'll just go out and sell more of my artwork or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just reducing the making it worth our while to actually come and do things for you. I mean, like a week's worth of work for, you know, like $500, you know, and then it is just a little bit too much work for me to do. Also, if you're, how should I put this? Well, yeah, just a little bit more understanding on certain things that we can't always be on time, and just understanding that things have to be made a little bit easier for us because of the amount of stuff we daily just have to go through. I don't know if you've seen, every once in a while I'll do this in my stories on my Instagram, is just sit there and list through all the stuff I've had to deal with in one day. Like suicide crisis on the reserve, you know, like 3 people have committed suicide. There are more going to commit suicide. You have to go and talk to your friends and family, make sure that you're monitoring their feeds so that they're, you know, that they're going to be healthy, that you can go and help them. Then you find out your relatives out on the East Coast are getting attacked by the fishermen out there. They're shooting flares at them. They're stealing their lobster nets. That kind of thing has happened on my reserve. Indigenous women who were on our reserve, who were fisher women, who are feeding their families, you know, they get surrounded by 20 anglers, all like shouting at her, saying that they're stealing their money, and you know, she has no right to these fish and stuff like that. And then you find out like a court case has gone through, and another murderer has gotten off scot-free from killing an Indigenous child, and then you have to deal with your son trying to go to the hospital for some treatment, and then they find his status card, and then they start treating him badly, because now all of a sudden, he's not white passing anymore. They've got the status card. They know he's Native. So then they start harassing him. And it just goes like on and on and on. Like some days, like I see like 20 things that are just so difficult to get through. And then they have to put that aside and, go to work, and you got to smile, and you got to try and sell yourself to some white person who is just really not that interested, and you're like, some days it's just really, really difficult. We do have a lot more on our plates than most people, and it just doesn't let up.
Thank you.
And that's one thing people don't understand. Like, it never lets up for us. That when we let it up, I feel bad when I have to take like a week off to recuperate. I feel horrible because I know there are some things happening that I should be going out there and helping my friends, helping my family members do.
Fair enough.
So, sometimes the self-care, is sometimes really difficult to even do for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you both for your answers in regards to that. I mean, there's so much there. I know that working within the not-for-profit industry for the past 10 years of my life, I've seen literally indigenous people sitting at the table of conversation saying that, how about decolonizing the organization? And without fail, the white man up front saying, oh yeah, we just don't have the resources. I'm like, there's an indigenous person right in front of you. They want to talk about it. There's a reason why they brought it up. It's mind-baffling. But one of the things I also wanted to comment on is, Patrick, you are wearing your orange shirt today, and talking about Orange Shirt Day that's going to be on September 30th. Something like that, I feel, should be made mandatory in terms of education for people to realize. Like, I mean, not-for-profit organization, we want to decolonize ourselves, but Orange Shirt Day comes along, and yet we're like, oh no, we're inclusive of the Two-Spirit Nations. And then the Orange Shirt Day comes along, and it's like it never happens. What do you recommend for something for organizations in terms of Orange Shirt Day, you wearing that with pride, and what that really means? What is Orange Shirt Day? Let's start with that.
Sure. So, I mean, from my perspective and where I got into this was through a woman named Phyllis Webstat, and she began this campaign to try and educate more Canadians about what happened in residential schools, but then also like try and actively change the way that Canadians are taught in schools, so that this is actually included in the curriculum. And so in and around the 30th, for the last, from like 1896 to 1996, pretty much, that's when Indigenous kids were taken from their families to go to these horrible schools, and basically what they were taught there was hatred and how to be horrible, because that's what the teachers kind of did to them. Like, if you're speaking your language, like, here's X, Y, and Z bad thing that we're going to do to you, that it's going to be horrifying and horrific, that you unfortunately pass down to your children, and they'll pass it down to their children. So it's like over 100 years there's all these systemic issues like that we talked about in this podcast today, and it's like, where do you even fucking start? Like, I think that's a good place to kind of start the conversation, and I think the least that people can do is pick up an orange shirt, and this one happens to be that all the funds go back to Phyllis Webstat's organization called the Orange Shirt Society, which is doing some great work in sort of advocating for changing the Canadian education system.
Very nice.
So, yeah, I mean, I could go on and on, but
yeah. Patrick, Keitha, I also know that you have orange shirts available. Designs also available on your website, both of you. It's available. So our viewers, I highly recommend to get those t-shirts, wear them with pride, and just really show start somewhere. Start somewhere. Like Keitha said earlier, it's all available already. The movement is already there. Just friggin' follow with it. Don't try to create something new. You don't have to do that. Now, guest co-host, we are going to take a much needed commercial break right now, and while we process everything that was said, and we'll be right back, viewers.
I'm scheduling my post-quarantine hookup itinerary.
I'm exploring every nook and cranny of self-love.
I'm engaging with online fetish communities I never even knew existed.
I am flattening that curve, honey. Ugh, tighter. Oh, tighter. Ugh.
Tyler!
I just found out I've got HIV. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm scared.
Hey, I know you're scared. I've been living with HIV for 25 years, and with treatment today, I'm living a long, healthy life. You can too.
Maybe I will be okay.
Welcome back, viewers. Guests, thank you once again for being with us today. We are so grateful for your time with us. We've learned a lot. There's a lot to be talked about, and there's so much more that still needs to be talked about. The resources are out there. They're available. We're going to put a few of them up on under the description of this episode. That's going to be available for anyone. We encourage our viewers to share this episode with as many people so we could start having this conversation. As people of color, your co-hosts, we're all people of color here. We want to push that. We have a responsibility to be better, to be welcoming, and to stop what we're doing, and to decolonize ourselves, and to really practice reconciliation and include indigenous people in everything. This is their land. This is their life that we have taken over, and it's time to give it back, and it's time. There's ways of doing it, and they are available for us. So now, all that being said and done, thank you, our guest, for everything. Do you guys have anything you want to add to what was discussed today?
Just for me, like, I thank you very much for having me. And I think the last word of the day is that you don't have to be everyone's best friend in these sorts of things, but you can be everyone's sister or brother and just kind of help out where you can.
Thanks, Patrick. Keitha.
For me, I like to say truth before reconciliation. I mean, you can't reconcile what you don't know about.
True.
So going out there and learning about these things before you try and reconcile.
Agreed.
So, truth before reconciliation.
I really love that. Thank you, Keitha. That's very powerful right there. Thank you so much. Hosts, do you have anything that you want to add before we say our goodbyes?
I'd like to say one thing. If you buy your orange shirt, make sure the money goes to a First Nations group.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is great. Thank you for the great conversation. This is very, very much an eye-opener.
Yes.
All right.
So, excellent. So thank you guys, everyone. Viewers, you can catch this episode online on our Facebook page, The Queer Bunch, YouTube page. Search for The Queer Bunch as well. And details will be found in the description, including our amazing guests and their artwork as well. So that being said, keep safe, stay diligent, and most importantly, keep being resilient. Love from our queer family to yours at home. Goodbye.
Hey.
Thank you very much.